Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon from Punli, Cambodia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to welcome you back to our second session today in IYCS 2020. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Nora Spasia, but you can call me Sisi, and I will be your friendly guide during the session today. Before we start our second session, that we are going to discuss about what should we prepare as ASEAN youth and civil society to face a new normal with four wonderful speakers today. We would like to invite you to hear Indonesia national anthem and also ASEAN anthem. Okay, thank you. Pleased to meet you, everyone. First of all, we would like to describe about IYCS. IYCS stands for International Youth Contribution Summit. IYCS 2020 was held in collaboration with the Rumah Kepemimpinan and the ASEAN Foundation as an online basis using the Zoom platform and invited up to 1,000 participants. This activity was held with enthusiasm to gather young people, especially at the ASEAN level, to discuss certain themes, raise and try to find a solution and the problem discussed to each session. And then Rumah Kepemimpinan is a non-profit institution in Indonesia which is engaged in issues of education and youth, with the main activity being the provision of scholarship and guidance for youth in several cities in Indonesia. And ASEAN Foundation is also a non-profit institution at the ASEAN level that carries the mission to commit to promoting ASEAN awareness through people-to-people interaction and collaboration with ASEAN stakeholder to build a caring, cohesive, equitable, and peaceful for ASEAN community. And then we have several platforms that support IYCS, seasia.co, campaign.com, Rumah Millennial, webinar into. And then you can express all your opinion related with COVID-19 in our the other platform, that campaign.com. You can see the tab from ASEAN for Change and then posting your best photo in order to make this event quite here in outside. And then today we are going to have a discussion about what should we prepare as ASEAN youth and civil society to face a new normal. We have four wonderful speakers, but before we have that session, we would like to invite you also to hear and listen about some pointers do and don't during the event, therefore we can enjoy this event today. Okay, thank you for the slide. But before again we enter into our session, please, we would like to invite you to hear our ASEAN anthem for a while. Okay, thank you for still with us. And then now we are going to have that session, our second session. I'm pretty sure that each one of you quite excited for today. Therefore, I would like to invite to our first speaker, one of a prominent politician and also entrepreneur in Indonesia. He has elected as a vice governor of DKI Jakarta in 2017, and then also candidate of vice president in our last election, 2019, and also founder Rumah Kerja as also one of community that assists a young generation in Indonesia to build their passion and also give a training. So we would like to invite Mr. Sandiaga Uno. However, he has a dissertation defense today, so he couldn't be able to attend the event. However, he already submitted a special video recording from him for all participants, and he sent his warm regards to all participants today. We can see the video today. Okay, may we see the video of Mr. Sandiaga Uno that already submitted today to our participant in IYCS 2020.
I believe that there will be a COVID cohort. Well, actually, there's this COVID cohort already in the making. The generations of young people that are adapting to the new reality, bracing the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, definitely. It is so hard, especially for entrepreneurs who are just starting up and early stage firms, small, medium enterprises, even for the most advanced entrepreneur like myself. I have a portfolio that is completely feeling the impact of COVID-19, up to 70% of the negative impact that we are feeling. Still, there's a silver lining in the cloud that this pandemic also is the time for us to learn, to invest in this time to look at these unfortunate situations and find what are the opportunities behind these difficult times, to strengthen how to improve your resiliency. First, young people become more digitalized. Entrepreneurs become accelerated into the digital economy, pushed to transform to enter the Industrial Revolutions 4.0 earlier, adapting and embracing and adopting new technology faster than ever before. Currently, most of ASEAN entrepreneurs in various ASEAN countries have only around 50% of digital penetrations, of internet penetrations in their production processes, as well as in the value creations. In Indonesia in particular, it's still below 20%. Now we are expecting throughout this pandemic, things will be accelerated and more digital connectivities and penetrations, accelerations in the coming years will be felt, that more and more SMEs and entrepreneurs are transforming not only their sales side going online, but the entire value chain will be digitized. Secondly, young entrepreneur will implement more efficient and effective and more concise, more compact operation. And they will be more open. They will push on sustainability, more inclusive, and more collaborative. I think those are the impact that we will be seeing for the COVID-19 to the entrepreneurship side. I think that more than half of the ASEAN populations, in particular the greater Southeast Asia, is actually a very young demography. A lot of them are under the age of 30, constituting the largest ever cohort of ASEAN youth. The peak populations over 220 million is expected of these young generations in the year 2038. ASEAN youth will become digital natives. They are born with the tools and they will have strong affinity to foster innovations, to foster entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurships foster leaderships. And they, through technology, through these adaptations, they will become COVID winner, pandemic survivor. And throughout the problems that they're facing, they will become part of the solutions. And the youth can contribute with innovations and creativity. And as you see, entrepreneurial orientations will push more innovations in this pandemic. More people will be risk takers because they see only the upside, the very limited downside when you are in the really tough pandemic situations, and they become proactive. We will see new generations no longer just waiting for the opportunity, but they are embracing and becoming proactive to look for opportunities. My opinion is that there will be a survival tendency. People will focus on their primary needs. Somehow, the weakening economic situations, distorted globalizations, trade war, oil price war, some countries will put their own interests their own nationalistic view forward, but it is going to be only temporary. I think what we are seeing is this pandemic will push every country to be more localized, more domesticated, in the sense of limiting the international engagements, but only for a limited period of time. After that, they will need global cooperations and regional cooperations like ASEAN to fight this pandemic. To the contrary of what is a knee-jerk situations, I believe of closing and on focusing on their own national interests. I think on the contrary, on the medium to longer term, we should advance international cooperations to deal with this health challenge, to look for vaccine, to work together to create a different sets of tourism and trade and investments, simultaneously trying to solve the moderations of the aggregate demand so that companies will be able to choose a lower impact to the environment, but yet producing more values, and how we could actually rise up to the challenge and face the social and economic crisis. And we can only do it by actually holding our hands together. In togetherness, we will be able to support each other, build an ecosystem, build a movement to contribute and survive by providing solutions. This is the right time for global unity and collaborations, and ASEAN in particular, its young generations.
Mr. Sandiaga Uno, for the wonderful video. And then if the participant have a question for him, don't worry, he will record later on the video and send to the IYCS to explain about the question that maybe you address later on. So next speaker, we have another wonderful speaker for sure. We would like to invite Mrs. Najila Sihab. And then may I read a short brief about her. She's one founder of SMSG Network, and then she graduated from master degree in psychology program in University Indonesia, and then also she has been actively contributed as a founder in educational platform. So Mrs. Najila, I hope that her in this room. So how ASEAN youth and civil society can transform this condition into an opportunity, particularly with technology optimization. Please welcome Mrs. Najla.
Thank you, Sisi. Hi, everyone. Hi, good afternoon. It's great to be here. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
It's excited. It's very exciting to hear from Sisi. I can feel the energy, even though the summit has to happen online this time, and I learned a lot from what Bang Sandi has been saying earlier. I guess we are really in a time of transition and looking into opportunity and challenges that we've been facing, especially in education sectors where I've been contributing, will be a very thoughtful discussion and reflection between us. Talking in front of youth, mostly students, I assume, still at their university or young professionals. when you talk about education, it's actually a very big part of our life. I think Cici mentioned earlier about what has been happening in education, especially in relation to adoption and level of maturity of using technology. I'll ask your permission to share a short screen, which I think will be important to ignite more discussions during the question and answer session. I think when most people talk about the pandemic and its effect on daily life, then we tend to forget about the youth. In the emergency situation, there are so many other urgent, more evident priorities. So you tend to kind of forget the needs that's not happening right in front of your eyes, but relate more to future needs, like learning goals and all the education aspects of youngsters. So I think it's very important to start the discussion today and trying to look at a wider and longer lens on what has been the impact of the pandemic to the education sector. When we talk about education and the pandemic, two key words that we cannot forget are adaptation and the future needs. Sadly, and this is an ongoing reflection for me as an educator, adaptation is something that does not come naturally to the educators and to the education ecosystem. I know it sounds ironic because, if you're talking about quality education, then one of the most prominent features should be adaptation. We're promising the future. We're trying to make a difference and using education as a bridge to develop future competence. But in reality, that's not what has been happening. Even before the pandemic, the education ecosystem has been one of the laggards in all the transitions compared to other sectors in society. So it's not actually a surprise that through this pandemic, education ecosectors, be it at a very micro level, in what's happening in the classroom or in a family room where distance learning is actually happening, has been having a lot of difficulty in trying to get through the whole distance learning situation and ensuring that the rights of each and every children to learn, to actually get quality education will be satisfied during these very hard times. Here I'm trying to look at a medium and long-term impact of a pandemic and what's going to affect and should be our common challenges and tasks to overcome during this pandemic situation and years after this. We've been seeing lack of nutrition and supplementary food intervention, as well as lack of non-digital learning tools for the vulnerable groups. As someone who's been, saying and more like giving a very strong voice about the emergency situation in Indonesia even before the pandemic, I really want to emphasize that all the effects that I've been listed here is actually something that has been happening for years or even tens of years before the pandemic. It's just becoming more apparent for many people when the situation is that there's an immediate transition from learning at schools to learning at home. The learning and achievement gaps will be a major problem once the school started to work as usual. Because what has been happening for most of the students are more similar to a holiday or a summer gap period. All group of students with high or low ability hasn't been able to reach their optimum potential, meet the minimum requirement during this distance learning period. I know it's not, no one have actually prepared for this pandemic, but the fact that the gaps are getting bigger and bigger and the period of this pandemic becoming much longer than we anticipated means that we cannot treat this as an emergency and make excuses about the inability of the system to adapt and meet the learning needs. Instead, we need to accelerate the adaptation period to ensure that the gaps won't become larger and larger. There isn't enough resource for counseling and intervention of mental health issues, while the data are actually showing that more and more violence are actually happening at home, affecting children and the whole family members. We have urgent needs for high quality remedial programs. Our special needs students has not been met with quality learning during the past years, but the importance of the problem and the lack of quality has become more apparent during this pandemic. There's limited access to enrichment activities during this emergency. A lot of so-called non-essential part of learning, which I personally believe are actually the fundamentals of learning, like religious studies, field trips, sports, etc., are the first one to get scratched from the timetable of students and university students. There's a minimum health and safety protection to reduce the risk of ongoing infection. And I've been seeing numbers where higher risks of dropping out are very apparent in many countries. So I'm not going to be delusional and say that the pandemic has bring only positive impact to the education ecosystem. I think it's a very complex system, and different groups within the ecosystems are affected in a different way. If you're talking about adoption of education technology, I'm one of a big believer of the ability of technology to actually change education and help solve problem. But with opportunity, there comes a different set of challenges as well. We need to be very reflective on what has been amplified by all this technology or platform that has been used during this pandemic. I want to be really careful of not amplifying or scaling an example of old practice and just using a fancy application to actually scale something that has been very outdated. It breaks my heart when I see technology used as an assignment platform, a tryout platform of one-way video tutorial, while the heart of education is actually always on the interaction, on the ability to do project-based, on getting feedback loop from students. So we really need to work extra hard and ensuring that we're empowering our students with the right technology. We're helping our teachers to scale best practice with the technology that actually disrupt how learning has been happening, instead of using technology to scale an outdated practice like test taking. We really need to reflect more on whom have been marginalized by the technology use. The equity issue, the disparity of achievement, the fact that certain group of vulnerable, poor students has been marginalized in Indonesian ecosystem is an old story. But technology brings its own problem and dividing the achievement gap even higher. For some students, learning from home basically means an increasement in your quality of learning, because you get two teachers. The teachers from your schools or from universities, the lecturer who's still working really hard to ensure that your learning needs are met, but also a very involved parents. But for a majority of students, where the level of involvement of the family, the ability to actually divide responsibility between working and meeting economic needs and helping your children to get good education, it's impossible for some. And this whole learning distance period is basically a holiday for them. The third point that I want us to reflect upon, and this is one thing that, which is a personal mission for me as an educator who also develop a technology platform, is how do we prove the effectivity of technology? It's the $6 million question. Even the biggest edutech platform in the world hasn't been able to prove that a certain platform or certain application can actually enhance learning in a much more meaningful way than a more blended and well-rounded approach of a face-to-face meeting. So while I'm also very excited about the opportunity to triple-fold or tenfold the adoption and maturity level of education ecosystem in using technology, I'm being very cautious of not becoming trapped within a certain trend that won't really make a difference in the ecosystem. I think one of the most exciting part about this whole pandemic situation in the ecosystem is that I want us to really give more opportunity for the youth to become more empowered. The fact that they need to be more independent in their learning, the fact that they can give direct feedback to the lecturer or the teachers. This is actually an opportunity to realize that youth are not citizens in waiting. This is an opportunity for the adults surrounding all these youngsters to listen more, to validate their emotion and show more empathy toward what has been happening for them as a learner or a victim of this pandemic. We need to use the opportunity to give more authority, to authorize different kind of initiatives that are led by the youth instead of just them doing what has been instructed or ordered, or certain initiative that has been led by the adults in the room. We need to give the youth more opportunity to act and also to reflect on their experience. I know, as the younger generation who's joining this session might fail, one of the most basic questions that I've been asking over and over again is, Mbak Ella, where do we start? And I have, probably a bit longer experience than most of you when we talk about initiating movement or certain action. The first block where I start is always by identifying fellow innovators. And it's actually quite easy. When you talk between your circle, your group of friends, someone who's in the same class with you, someone who's been living years and years together in certain environment, the easiest way is to actually reflect upon, have you been talking about the what? Have you only been talking about what's happening around you but stop at superficial level? Or whether there has been some follow-up conversation. So what? How does this affect me? And the now what part? What should I do? How can I give my voice? What do I need to do better to fix the situation? Innovators will never stop at the what and so what. The innovators within you, or the way you would identify fellow innovators, is the one who's ready to be more action-oriented in whatever subjects or topic they are passionate about. So that's my homework to you. That's one thing that I want you to ponder more about. Have you find your fellow innovators, or have you been very lonely in this road and just feel overwhelmed by whatever is happening and feel victimized by the situation? There's a lot of journey, and I think being an innovator in any movement, be it education, environment, health and nutrition, there are so many problems that the world needs a lot of change to happen, and more change makers to actually make it happen. But reflecting on my experience before this session, I think actually constructing your own personal theory of change. There are so many, there are wealth of knowledge over there about what needs fixing, but you need to do some sense making, to try to connect all this theory, to try to connect all the information into your own personal experience, and try to identify, find the biggest driver of improvement from your point of view. Two individual person can work in the same subject, the same area of interest, but come up with totally different answers about what needs fixing first. So just find your personal theory of change, focus on what action do you think can make a real difference. One thing that I really want to emphasize is the need to continuously build energy between the early adopters. I read this research many years back, where one of the most common pitfalls of innovators are actually they forget to spend their energy on their fellow innovators and the early adopters. 90% of innovators become really frustrated throughout the journey because they tend to spend their energy on the laggards, trying to convince people who are not a true believer, who don't have the ability or the conviction to change, and that has been draining their energy for years and years. So start nurturing your circle early. As youth, you have ample opportunity to do best practice. Instead of waiting for something to happen, instead of waiting for someone else to start doing things that you think are important, you should start now. The sooner you start, the sooner you will learn, the sooner you will get an ability to actually reflect and fix your mistakes and do better next time. Please focus on building a good narrative of impact. Humility is one thing that I really believe in, and please take it as a constructive feedback. I think it's something that sometimes lack when I talk to youth nowadays. It's easy to brag about something as your outcome. Most of us don't realize that there's no real outcome that happen just because of one person or one organization. So be really humble in how you narrate your success. Realize that there are so many factors in the world that actually affect and helps your cause directly or indirectly, and sometimes in a way that you have not understood yet. Lastly, I think it's very important to commit to our aim to scale our best practice to any level. And you can do this by doing integration with other organizations. With the huge problem that we're facing, the ability to scale, to actually help other areas, other sectors, other organizations, not to reinvent the wheel, but learn from your success and your mistakes, and impact more and more community through your action will be very essential and determining whether the success will be a private success or a common success that actually achieve our mission together. That's all from me for now, and hoping to learn more and more from our next conversation. Thank you, Sisi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Najla. I believe what a thoughtful and also wonderful insight and also messages, since we already have a question, but maybe you can answer the question later on, Mrs. Najla. Before we finish this whole session, I would like to invite to our next speaker, Mr. Edwansa Yusuf Ahmad. Okay, I hope Mr. Ridwan already in this room. But before we start, I would like to, again, a short brief about him. He is the one of staff of West Java governors and also survivor COVID-19. So this is one of maybe another wonderful story we believe about that. And also, he graduated in Master of Art in Erasmus University Rotterdam. Welcome, Mr. Ridwan Yusuf Ahmad. Okay, hello, Mr. Ridwan. Thank you for joining IYCS today. So,
thank you.
So we would like to ask your experience becoming a COVID-19 survivor, and what should we do as young people to contribute in this situation?
Yeah, thank you, Bu. Very good afternoon for everybody. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Happy to be here. My first global online conference Usually, if we do an online conference, we travel to some places and meet new people, have a gatherings, and then we do the discussions. But now I think it's a new experience for all of us to have this kind of online platform to do a big size of conference. As the committee invite me to discuss about how be the youth roles and how will be the civil society tasked to face the new normal after the COVID. I'm very happy to share in the beginning my experience as COVID survivor. I'm the 10th patient of COVID-19 in West Java and around 100 or 110 nationally. So it's a very new cases in mid of March. Well, actually, when I got the case, is by an accident. So I'm helping my boss, the governor, to set up his own West Java lab to test the COVID. I help him in taking and importing and getting the test kit from South Korea directly. And part of my job in helping the governor is to get more contact and network for the foreign relations. So after 1 week after the test kit is arrived, the lab is already to set up, and the governor asked some volunteers to be the how you call it, the practice rabbit, if we call it in Indonesia, kelinci percobaan, and I'm one of them. So basically, it's just by accident. I just being checked. Normally, I thought it's nothing will be happen, but then I've been confirmed as a positive case from the PCR test, the swab test that maybe we know they take from the throat and from the nose, which is quite quite hurt actually. So that's the case, and I went to hospital. I've been isolated for 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks at home. The good thing is, as I don't have any symptoms, so I'm what we so called as asymptomatic patients. So basically, the production of antibody that being produced by my body recover myself. So it needs around 3 to 4 weeks until the doctor said I'm fully recovered and ready to back to the people. So yeah, I hope nobody get another COVID, at least in this forum, because it's quite challenging. It's not only about the illness, but basically it's about the boring things. If you don't know what to do in the isolation, is quite challenging, especially if you already have families. Then you need to separate with your families, your loved ones, and it's very challenging to manage your psychological things. And also, in the other hand, you need to recover yourself. Maybe some notes regarding this COVID-19 for the youth before I go to the content after this is don't underestimate the case, don't underestimate the virus. Maybe for us, the youth, mostly it doesn't have any symptoms. If we get COVID, we can get to it quite normally, or if I would say it's quite easily, because we just need to be rest for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then the virus will go out from our body, basically like that. But when the virus goes to the elder one, like our parents or grandparents, or somebody that older than us, or somebody that have also another illness like heart issues, lung issues, diabetes, and etc., is much more dangerous, because COVID is more impactful to this kind of people, who have other kind of illness. So I think as part to undergo to the content is basically one of the role of the youth is to socialize and educate the people to avoid COVID, to prevent ourselves from the COVID-19. As we know that we in Indonesia, we have what we so-called 3M model. We call it use the mask, wash your hand, physical distancing, and maybe if I may add, avoid the crowd, and also take your bath before you return back to home, or after that you back to home. Yeah, maybe regarding the context that I would to say, well, I'm a youth basically, still 32 years old. People call my age as millennials, even though currently I'm quite hate to be called as millennials, because for me sometimes millennial is too overrated. I mean, we are youth that should be as part of the solving to solve the issues of our country, not to make any kind of mistakes. But sometimes we see there's still a lot of millennials, they do recklessly, and then they make a bad impact for our country. Ladies and gentlemen, I think one of the first current challenge that we are facing now is regarding the COVID is we are facing a new role or a new type of environment, especially the digitalization. As we know, COVID has pushed digitalization up to the maximum level as today. So I don't know what will happen next. Maybe people will find a new invention. I don't imagine to do a meeting when I'm traveling from one place to another place by road, doing a conference, something like that. So, but now with the Zoom technology, Google meetings, and also my son, he took the class with the Google Classroom. Something that we don't imagine last year, even to do it all online, we do it today. So digitalization has happened now, and I think we need to adapt. On the other hand, however, we saw that a lot of negative issues that being happen after the COVID-19. As Pak Sandiago Uno mentioned on the beginning, that the business is locked down. I also have some business. Usually I have like 30, 40 people working with me, but because the business doesn't go on, I have to lay off around 20 to 25 people. So now I'm just keeping like 5 to 10 people on the business just to make sure it maintained. So it's one case. The business dropped down. It means the less business, less job, and it means in the other hand, in the future, it will need more time to revive if we expect to revive. If I reflect to the case in West Java, the province that I'm working with now, it happens that all the economists suggest that the West Java economy will be -2 by the end of this year, and need another 1 year to return to the current situation, which is 6% economic growth. So at least after the COVID is another 1 or 2 years of struggle, which we as a youth need to take part. Another issue that we are facing due to the COVID again, most of the government budget being shifted. So I don't know what happened in the national level or other province, but at least in West Java, 30 to 35% of our provincial budget has been shifted to COVID-related budget. And another the initial budget that we use for infrastructure development, subsidies, and etc. This has to be deleted, which means new jobs, new creations, new spendings cannot be done until next year if the economy back to normal. And last but not least, we also understand that education has been changed. I mean, we're not only talking about the teaching things, doing the teaching online, but as far as I understand, maybe Bu Najila knows better about the education issues, but as youth Bu Najila, I understand that one of the important thing of education is the social interaction itself. So what make youth different is they socialize. What make youth different, they move together, they hang out, they mobilize, they do something together, not only in the class, but outside the class. As an activist, when I was a student, I understand this is one of the most important thing of education, when we can do something together with our friends, put up our ideology or idealism, and make a vision about our country, not only about the teaching itself. It's something that we are missing by this year. So if we remind when we came first, when we enter the universities, there's always like what we so called as orientation week. It's something that usually everybody waiting for. This prospecting in Indonesia we call is something that what's in lifetime memory. But for the 2020 batch, they don't experience this kind of environment. So what is the strategy of the youth? So I have 4 points that I would like to raise. The first, I would like to remind us, every one of us, including myself, that youth is not only us. Youth is not only about us that have this kind of access, this kind of privilege to do all the digital things, to do all the online things. Those who work in the industries as workers, as laborers, is also youth. Those who work in the informal sector is also youth. Those who working as a cleaning service in the hospital, let's say, is also youth that we need to take care of. That they might need our help, they might need our support, they might need also motivation to continue their life. And those the youth that doesn't have job, that also youth that we need to take care. I cannot imagine how many unemployment happened after the COVID. Let's say in West Java, we have a lot of vocational school, but now the industries, they stop. So it means the 2019 alumni who just graduated recently, they don't have any kind of opportunities because the industry is stopped. So it means a lot of unemployment from the vocational schools alumni. Another thing that I would like to raise is how we can support and educate the people. I think I mentioned in the beginning how we can promote the protocol COVID standards on any kind of activities. And the third, I would like to emphasize also on how we can also support local business. I mean, a lot of us doing some kind of small and medium business. They make like food, drinks, clothing. Maybe today it's like a cloth max that we are selling to many places. I think it's a good thing that we can buy and promote this kind of product so we can help the youth also to survive. And then regarding ourselves, I also would like to promote that maybe it's the time that we need to save our cash. We never know when the pandemic will end. So if you still have some cash on your account, manage it properly. Don't spend it too much at this moment. So because the situation is still very uncertain in the future. And then I hope through this pandemic we can also help the other people. Because if you compare Indonesia to other countries, maybe we are quite low or we quite beaten in many ways. I mean, we don't have that kind of sophisticated COVID-19 technology like South Korea. We don't have many cash like China. We don't have that kind of super hospital infrastructure like Germany. We don't have that kind of social safety net, social health insurance like the UK. So the things that might will bring us to get out from this COVID is the social solidarity. I think the social solidarity issues and also being put on our 5 principles in Indonesia, the Pancasila, the third principle, the Persatuan Indonesia, the solidarity, I think is something that not all countries have, not all nations have, but we have. So last but not least, I think I would like to give some final recommendation and final remarks, what next and what to expect. Considering that the pandemic, as Bu Najwa mentioned, we never know when it will be end. The pandemic, the epidemic curve in Indonesia is still rising, not yet slow. Every week we get a new news that the new numbers is coming, 1,800, 2,000, something like that, new case, new cluster happening, and we never know. So along with that, of course, there will be a lot of change. What I would like to see, what I would like to remark today is also because the title is ASEAN. I think we need to review a little bit how we define globalizations. Before, we define globalization as traveling, do trading, do investment, do everywhere. It's easy to enter any kind of borders, any border of any countries. But now we understand that it's not. Maybe we cannot travel overseas until the end of the year. Maybe. So we'll never know. But this is digital globalization will be the new globalization. The other thing that I found is globalization make Indonesia or maybe also other countries is too dependent to other countries regarding some material, some food, some medical equipment, and etc. So let's say in the beginning of the pandemic, we found that a lot of medical stuff, like 90% of medical stuff is being imported. And then because of the pandemic happened, all the demand in the overseas market is happening. So Indonesia only got left. Is under issues. Food, we also import a lot of food from overseas. I think we need to redefine this globalization by having more food sovereignty in our country. So when the pandemic ends, and when the pandemic happens again, or this kind of situation happens again, we're not too dependent to other countries. I think this is one of the role of the youth to make sure that we are quite independent in terms of food sovereignty and food security. And then how we can improve our capacity in the pandemic, I think like this kind of online courses, online seminars, etc. is also important. many of us are working at home, so it means that a lot of more time that can be done. I think it's also a good time for us to improve our capacity. So after pandemic, we will have more knowledge and etc. Myself, I'm attending an online course in Yale Universities by next week. It's a 4 weeks online course. And if nothing goes wrong, I will also take my second master's, an online second master's basically in the University of London. So it's something that's quite exciting. I mean, because of this pandemic, we got a lot of opportunities. I'm not imagining to take another master in online version, which is very, very nice. And I hope as the youth, we can be the part of the nation's revival plan. After the pandemic, I noticed President Jokowi also revised the structure of the COVID-19 task force. It's not only about the health, it's also about the economy. As I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of job has been lost, a lot of business has been shut down. And then I think it's important for us as youth, if you are a worker, if you have a job, do your job properly. If you have a business, expand your business, help the people, encourage other youth to do another business, and how we can create local products that can be brought here in Indonesia. Also, maybe we can also sell to other countries. So I think that will be points that I would like to say. Youth, yes, have a lot of important tasks to help this country, not only this country, but the world, basically, after the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ridwan, for the insight, particularly for us, young generation, who help the country's future. And then, again, if you have any question for the participant, you can also give the question. The speaker will answer all the question later on. Now, we would like to invite our last speaker, Mr. Kun Lee. He is a managing and executive director of Khmer NGO for Education, and also since 2011, he had a significant roles during his time as international trainer, and also some exchanging part. So please welcome Mr. Kun Lee. Okay, good afternoon from Indonesia. So, Mr. Kun Lee, maybe you can deliver to us your best practice to face this situation, how it works. Can you maybe deliver with us, and your experience during this pandemic?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Yes, so, CAN is an organization that works in the grassroots area, which is the area around the border of Khmer and Thai, which is an area that's been affected by the civil wars in the old times. And what I can contribute today is, thank you very much for inviting me in, and thank you for the youth here that participating in this. What I wanted to share is I can share what CAN is doing. Actually, is we are coming from a young group, which we start from an internship by our members of 25 staff of CAN. And those 80% of our staff are locally recruited, trained mentors, internship volunteers, and continue working since 2010 to now, which I believe that, and as my colleague believe that, education is helping the future of all children, especially the children in the poor communities and in the difficult communities in countries. I mean, in every country, children are affected by this. But if we see the children or the youth or the people living in the cities, living in the downtown, probably, okay, there's problem, but not much. But if you look at the children and family, those living in the countryside, in the remote area, it's much affected, much affected. So my experience as a team, when it started as this pandemic happened, especially in my area, in Battambang, in the border of Thailand, Cambodia, many organizations has started to work from home because of this, COVID. Which at that time I came up with, my team together. So asking what we should do now, because if we stop our core works in school building, because so far we're building 73 schools and we work with about 10,000 children and about 1,000 interns or youth, or I call it peer-to-peers or volunteers in the 95 communities we are working. So are we going to stop our work, or are we going to continue with a careful precaution and a strong, a measure to prevent this? And then by that time, all of my team said, no problem, we can keep doing, because those children and those intern and volunteer would be receive no education at all if we don't do any job there. Then I discussed it with my, senior management, and then we decided to go on. One of the best practices that can share in terms of supporting children in the community to continue learning, because in the remote area, in the grassroots area like here, like Cambodia, this is a big challenge already. There's no internet, there's no technology, and even there is people don't have phone. So the government, we work with the government and the counterparts to help tackle this. So the government has released the instruction and the information to help those learning in distance. So we try, but in the countryside remote it failed. So then we came up with the idea to go into supporting those children, because we were in the nursery school, in the primary school, secondary school, and the local interns, or I can say local youth. So we split our team to go into the school we are working and support as a home base and motivating parents, and our interns and volunteers in the community helping teaching children in home, and working with the community council for women and children to address the other issues that may happen. Like, first we promote about COVID-19 prevention. We use all the material that provided by government. We try to educate parents to be, following the instruction and guideline by the government. And after 3 months, so April, May, so Ken's team or Ken's work has been appraised by the local government counterpart and taken as one of the best practice for school and teachers and the educator to continue the work. So what I can see the best is in those areas. 80% of children, even those in these times of the COVID, they can continue their education at home or in a small group with support our volunteership and internship. So come back to this, youth. This is very important. I would not call youth, I would call internship or volunteer. From my team, we have 25 staff together. We started from a very local youth. Even myself, I come from raised by my single mom and got to school, but I started volunteering and internship when I was 16. I personally, I would share a bit. I have an uneducated plan. I don't know what I could do. My mom, during her difficulties, and need to study somewhere in the city. by luck, I just met friends who, bring me to go to school and keep going. By this, which I really strongly believe education can help. After 15 years, I can see what's the improvement, what's the change that we can make by getting a child to go to school at earliest time. The same as my team also, we have similar background in education. That's why up to now, with all support, we have been working, building school in the community, in the rural area. We work with the children, and we start working with an internship and voluntary systems in 2010. I can say my experience to few internships that we have. I asked her, now she studied at universities 3 years here in Battambang. I asked her why you decided to continue from 100 kilometers, the border area, to Battambang city. She said, when I finished grade 12, luckily she finished, she said she doesn't know what to do. She just stopped study, working in the garden or farm rice like the parents. And then when she started joining with Ken team to go to school, talk to the children, teaching children, we teaching children like preschool, or we also promoting about the basic health. We also a charter organization, so we talk about child, child and child protection. And then she said, by engaging with our team, with the community, with the teacher, with the school, she said, I should continue my study. Then she decided to come and start and talk to her family, and she got a scholarship by herself. Just after 2 years, she's been volunteering with Ken. This is one example. We have many internal young volunteers from Ken in 2010 that I've been working, our team been working, to now becoming teachers. I mean, they came a long way from the area, the community, come to Battambang, study for 2 years, and then become a teacher. They go back and teach the children. So we have about 30% of those peers. At that time, I called them peers. So, local volunteers. Then within also, in those teachers, I'm very, very proud that 5 of them became a director. Just after 3 years of her, getting back and work in those community. I talk about the context of rurality. This is not in the city. I talk about the context because we are grassroots organization. So by this challenge of impact of COVID, as I mentioned at the beginning, we continue our work as a team, and we work with the government as a partner, key stakeholder, to ensure, and the community council to ensure that children or family are not affected by promoting the awareness raising and providing soap, but also children support at the home-based, we call it a home-based support education. During this time also, Ken has been lucky to get 2 internships from Battambang as an IT, helping and arranging the distance learning, because since we have engaged in the youth so far until 2019, that Ken has been involved with this Asian Foundation on this youth empowerment, which is another additional work contributed to the connect between the Cambodian youth, local youth, to the Asian youth, to understand what the cultural differences, what is the education status, how they, youth can be educated in the different countries. So it was a big experience that we could see the connection and the changing has well connected the motivation of the local youth to understand why it's different, of culture-wise, different education system in different countries. So by this, based on our talking together, okay, we should improve more work getting involved with volunteers, so local volunteers. So we get, with the input from the local youth we have, from the team we have, because we work in those areas now, we have 25 teams of active peer-to-peer. I would say active peer-to-peer because they engage in the, working with the community, with volunteering, going to help children at home, joining in a training or mentorship that provided by the Ken specialist, or we have advisor. Luckily, can have a very, very kind and committed advisor to supporting in training capacity building. So with these ideas of the improvement for the new initiative to tackle the times now, especially during this COVID, and to continue the education, our Ken team continue to be improved by capacity building on quarterly basis, as usual, but more frequently down to the field. I mean, before we used to work a lot in, have a meeting back to the head office, but now we move our approach to get to the, to the countryside of it, or, a venue where we can, get to more access to the more local youth that cannot have a transport to Battambang. And basically, and especially also with this new idea that we have, or new initiative that we have with this program connected with empowering youth, become as a pilot idea of having a community training center for volunteers and youth. From this, we have been developed a manual, develop a training, and providing equipment so that youth in the local area. So we now at the moment in the center run by the youth group. Ken team is mentoring them. We're providing support on training on the new methodology, a new topic, and especially what they're doing now is to help going to the community and the villages, houses to promote about the COVID response and prevention, sharing soap, helping children in education. Specifically also, they help in teaching, or like I would say counseling to families and the children with special needs, with disability. Over children that we work about, we have 600 family that is in the category of a disability or special need. And, in this case, our youth also go, specifically to help them, and then to help the other small group, because here we can continue the job teaching children, but with the social distancing, with the hand washing, like we provided. And so this youth is not just, they come to the center every week to talk about, what is the training, or especially the training center now is you are also there, additional research room, and can invite it. Like last week, we invited the Forum specialists on peace and meditation to go and train them on peace and meditation counseling. So to cut short, the Ken team will continue our work as normal with the proper and strong measurement of prevention. And ourselves together here believe that we have to start from ourselves. Because if we had closed the activity by March, when the government say, all right, there is a school closed, and we stop, maybe we couldn't have made more changes, and in this area has been one of the model that accepted by the local government about this practice. For the future to live norms after this COVID, I think what can do is to establish additional training centers in a few different places, which we plan to do 3 in the next 1 or 2 years, and provided the capacity building on the computers and technology. Usually in the countryside, many children, many youth, they know how to use Facebook because they search for. They have smartphones sometimes if they're in the downtown, but computer, this is a problem. So one of our aim is to get them, a learning about the computer and basic understanding of the technology. And also our team, we have Kim San here, which is expert in technology. Connect them to use the WhatsApp, teach them to use, connect LinkedIn and the Telegram, which is Cambodian now use a lot of Telegram and Facebook. So to get as a group So we established all these 3 groups as a connection of the volunteer, local youth in helping with the core missions, helping children in communities. And we believe that the engagement of youth from the local communities, like Kent, we have 25 staff, but 80% of us are from local. And we see the sustainability, and we believe that the youth that connected, the youth that get trained at the communities, at the training center, and by our support together, I believe that the needs of the children, poor children community getting education will be supported by those committed and young youth in the future. Thank you very much. This is from my part.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tun Bun Lee, for your again for your insight and wonderful insight and also messages. And now we are opening this Q&A, question and answer session. And also we already received some question from the participant. First question is going to Mrs. Najila Sihab from Ramel Akil. What do you think about the inequality of online school support facilities, such as devices, internet signal, and how to overcome them? Then what learning method is suitable for this situation like today, with consideration of the uneven facility?
Hi, Ramel. Thank you for the questions. And like I said in the presentation, if you're talking about inequality in Indonesian education system, this has been a problem for tens of years since the very beginning of our independence. I think one of the positive side of this pandemic and the fact that we need to do distance learning is that more and more people realize how the education ecosystem has been useful and successful only for certain group. So if you're talking about how to overcome inequality and equity issues in Indonesia, I think it's important to see it from wider point of view as well. What's happening in the distance learning process, the fact that many families don't have access to data and source of learning through technology, the fact of that many kids don't have any gadget or smartphone to access their learning. It's just the tip of the iceberg. These same students has not been getting access to quality education in many parts of their schooling as well. They're usually the one who goes to school in low-cost private schools, which has very limited capacity. They're usually the students who's been getting teachers with very low competencies, because the way the education system works now, the government usually assign the best teachers to the best favorite schools. These students who hasn't been getting quality education during the pandemics are the one that's born in family within the poverty line, where the parents don't actually have enough resources, don't have the good habits to support the learning of the students. So the achievement gap, the opportunity gap that you've been describing is something that need to be tackled comprehensively, not just by buying them, a certain cell phone or giving extra data quota during this pandemic. There needs to be a very comprehensive intervention. One of them, for example, the PPDB, the way we allocate which students goes to which government schools and actually get subsidized by the government. Because even when you look into our current budgeting model, government for years has been giving subsidies to students who don't actually need the subsidy, and forgetting this marginalized group of students who actually need more and more support and affirmative action from us. There needs to be a very heavy investment from government or private sectors on early childhood educations, because all the achievement gap that's happening right now, and we're seeing becoming very apparent at the high schools or middle schools level, actually started much younger, even when they're at such an early age. Some families have the awareness, have the access to good quality early childhood educations, high family involvement, while some, which, you know, in fact in Indonesia, the majority of them are not exposed to enough stimulation since the very early age. So I think inequality is one of the most challenging aspects that we need to tackle in Indonesian education ecosystem. As an emergency support right now, distributing non-digital learning materials is something that we really need to accelerate and do more together at Semua Murid, Semua Guru Network. We've been working with more than 700 organizations throughout the countries to distribute tens of thousands learning materials. And I've been seeing great initiatives trying to tackle this problem during this COVID situation. But I think it's very important to re-emphasize that this is not a new problem. This is not a problem that can be solved with months or during this pandemic. It needs a more sustainable intervention and strategies from different point of view, from the policymakers, and also bottom-up approach and intervention initiated by civil society movement. I hope this answers your questions.
Okay, Mrs. Najla, the other question is still related with the previous question from Lanang Nugroho from Erlangga University about the education condition in the new era, new normal. We know that education adapt to make technology in all learning activity. Ironically, some of the people in the poor condition have not this privilege to access this education as well. How about your view to solve this problem? Thank you.
I'm a big believer in a blended learning approach. I think integrating technology, learning with digital integration will be one of the most apparent shifts that's happening in the future, with or without the pandemic. It's just bound to be. Technology has been a really big part of the youth life. It's becoming an extended reality for them in many other aspects except of their schooling. So I believe in the potential of technology to do a lot of goodness and enhance the quality of learning. But I also believe that to really nurture a well-rounded competencies, to really develop a child roundedly for whole child development, you still need a combination with face-to-face interaction, some direct instruction, an independent assignment, and structured teaching and learning time inside the schools and also outside of schools. So if there's one thing that I become very grateful during this pandemic, is the realizations that technology can do a lot of things, but also the realizations that there are different kind of technology. There are different tools that you can use for certain learning outcomes. So what's the percentage of learning that should happen with technology during the pandemic, after the pandemic, and which part of technology that should be integrated within the classroom is a questions that need to have continuous reflections, because I think each school setting, each community context will have different answer to these questions. For some students, technology integration might mean, you know, once a week computer lab activities. For other students, it could mean, you know, 90% of online learning with certain synchronous sessions and offline sessions once a month. The degree of adaptability and flexibility, and also the collaborations between schools and teachers, the distribution and democratizations of opportunity, the distribution of high quality content. I believe we have a lot of things to be excited about the usage of technology within a classroom and for education. But we really need to be careful not to imply a one-size-fits-all approach, the reality is there are so many differences, even within the context of our country. Each geographical region have their own challenges. Each teachers have different sets of competencies, have different level of comfort or anxiety when dealing with technology. So consistent support, consistent capacity building effort for the students, for the teachers, for the schools, and also for the parents to know when and how to use technology effectively. It's something that we really need to accelerate.
Okay, thank you. We are going to move to Mr. Edwansa Yusuf. Because this pandemic has been around for a long time enough, some people have started to take it easy and move on to daily life as a old normal. Even some people don't care anymore about the new normal protocol. How do you respond to the situation, remembering that as you are a COVID-19 survivor and then the virus still exists and continues to spread to the world? Thank you.
Yeah, of course, it's very sad fact that we know that a lot of people still, well, it's not still. They're not going to the new normal, but they're just going to the old normal normally. So I went to Jakarta actually a couple of days ago. I had some meeting that I need to attend. My plan is just to come to the meeting and get back directly to Bandung. I drive my car by my own to make sure that I don't get contact with anybody. But at some point, I saw some, I went to Kuningan area and I saw like people just going outside. The mall is still open. People still hang out. Some use the face mask, some use not. So, of course, for me especially, it's a very sad things. But I would like to tell the people it's not about the patients only. It's also about the medical team who work very hard, who work day and night along this like 3, 4 months or almost 5 months, just to make sure everybody being treated. When you go to hospital, you just being treated same as the others. And the doctors, the nurse, the cleaning service, the catering, and all the people who work, they just feel very sad. Like for this medical staff, if they go to the hospital, they need to also quarantine themselves before they go back home. In some places, I think in Jakarta, also in West Java, some of the doctors and the nurse, they don't go back home. They have some kind of transit place like a hotel, and they even don't meet their families for a couple of days or weeks. So I think this kind of people, they need to put more empathy. COVID is nation issues. COVID is not an individual issues. COVID is what I say a social solidarity issues. If you want to fight COVID, you fight as a nation. If you want to lose COVID, you lose as a nation. So I think I don't agree with this kind of behavior. They put easy COVID too much. Maybe at some points sometimes in top of my mind, maybe people need to get COVID first and feel isolated first, or their families first to get, or maybe need to pass away, something like that, until they understand how you call it, the bad effect of COVID. Yeah. I don't agree with that kind of behavior.
Okay, thank you. Empathy is the key. So, Mr. Kun Bunli, we also received a question for you from Andy. Cambodia has a land border with 3 other ASEAN countries, which means the higher opportunity of people mobilization. At this pandemic situation, how Cambodia tackle this challenge? Because of the positivity rate is very good, less than 300 cases until now. I think you are still muting the sound button, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Hello. Yes. Can you hear?
Yes.
Yeah, I will try to answer these questions because as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a more believe in education and philosophy. I'm not related to any politics, religions, or. But what I can see, from my the government practice, you probably heard about the government has been quite accepted and praised for the commitment in responding to the COVID-19, that is a pandemic. What I can see as when I go down to field, even though along the border of Thailand, so the border is still closed, and so the local government has been providing really, to me, what I can see from those points, especially in Thailand, border and Khmer border, there've been a lot of discussions about how to support each other on economic, how, but also to be preventive on this issue. It's true that there's some, family condition economy that moving, across the border for, work in Thailand, that, Cambodian and Khmer used to go to Cambodia, still happening illegally. But, during this epidemic, the situation, the living and incoming of the family has been affected. So sometimes there is a bad, I would call a bad person that tried to get benefit from those family that has been, poorly understanding or cannot read and write, or especially they've been rely on since the beginning that on the labor work. So at the moment, if we see about the government responses, we are, we still have the border closed, but we still have the government still have some negotiation in getting across some, what's called a business, so that they can get help, support the family income. So, and it is true that those people along the border from Thailand, I believe also in the border, Vietnam has been affected quite a lot by the COVID-19 on education, on living, and on other issues as well. Before this COVID, also still in other country as well in Asian, a lot of problem, trafficking, a dropout problem is still happening. That's why the government or NGO or civil society try to tackle together. So for this, I don't know if I can answer to this question, because, as I mentioned, I'm quite seeing this through my experience going down, along the border, like in the border of Sampalun, which is connected to until to Koh Chang, in Thailand. So the situation is like that. But what I can see is there is a few numbers of the family that are risking their life by, when people are, cannot read and write properly, and the people that try to get benefit from, trafficking them, and so it's difficult for them. So and since the area is difficult, and the geographical distances and rurality, so that's still a challenge. Is this answer to your questions?
Hopefully, it's answer the question from the participant, but we would like to stay with you first because there is another question. This is about education sector. New normal condition take all of us in education sector moving into online learning. On the other hand, some issues came up. For instance, proper gadget ownership for student or parent, and technical guidance, socialization for teacher and also for student. What, in your opinion, for the win solution to overcome the situation? What do you think? Thank you.
Technically, I would believe I would split into two opinions. One is, by the COVID-19 coming naturally, as our previous speaker said, that I can see, our team can see that technology is one of the opportunity that can help to provide a wider understanding of why family, why teachers, why youth, why interns or people in the countryside need to have a internet and need to learn computer need to know how to use properly the Facebook. You know, in every country, online learning is one of the method that the government is trying to provide it. But if you see in the city, Phnom Penh, Battambang city, in the city, so there's no much problem. There's problem, but not much problem. Because they are in the city, they have access to the internet, the teacher know how to use Zoom. But honestly, from my experience of my family, from this COVID response, I have 3 kids, and now they learn by Zoom every day, which is, I didn't see this before. They just used Facebook, but now they learn about Zoom. They learn about other media, other media challenges, media channel. But it's lucky because we live here in Battambang city. What about those living in the countryside, in the rural, where even you have phone, you don't have an internet? Luckily, in that lady, the government has made an agreement with the with one of the company to promote, more access to the online learning by providing access to the pages of the Ministry of Education, which I can see the quality for those parents that has been, getting to know more and spending more time with the children when they're using, phone to study. Still, it's a problem also because, Facebook is one part is good and one part is bad because a lot of marketing, a lot of bad size, so sometimes this has to be taken into the consideration of child protection and child safeguarding, or, maybe when the organization should know about the, like abusing the child through on internet, which is happening in the world. So this is one opinion. And the second, I would say for those countryside children, which I can see now, the director of the school that we used to work, the teachers and the family now getting learn more about the technology or understand about the benefit of using or, learning from those. And they can help to the children, they can help to the family members, which I believe, my opinion is to get a local young student or, internship or volunteers or youth, so that they can be equipped with more technology skill to help to the remote school, to help to the family, on this learning, which online learning, or we call it distant learning, which by the report lately, we see that online learning benefit more for the children in the city rather than in the children in the community or in the rural countryside. Of course, because of the, there is no electricity in somewhere. Even the government tried to put the program on the TV learning, because we have different channel on TV, but on those areas, the geography is difficult. So the best option for me, I believe, is unless the teachers, educators, and the management of the local community try to get during this time of COVID, and it's this time of school not opening yet. We have school opening, but have to be very high standard. So we have not a lot of school opening, but the government tried to open about 20 schools in high standard, But in those countryside, still a problem. So unless the teacher, the director of the school management, local government tried to get access to children home-based or small group-based by obtaining the precaution on social care responses and teaching children, and motivating parents to continue the teaching their own children, which is, of course, which some reports say, even though they can do continue study at a home-based or online, but quality is a problem. As you mentioned, quality of education is everywhere, I believe, but but if you think about those children in those areas geographically, they are even worse. And especially in the area we work in a Sikh community, as a Muslim community, so they're quite affected, because so when there is no learning, or when the school off, they may stay at home, and sometimes I met 2 weeks ago with my colleague, talked to a a girl when we go into a shop buying, I say, okay, you still studying by online or distance? I say, she said, no, she stopped. I said, why she stopped? I say, oh, because it take long time, the COVID, you know, from March till now, the school's not open yet. So my mom just sent me to go and get some work to do. So this is the realities in those areas. So I believe that if the organization, private agencies, and teachers and directors and the community leader engaging in getting youth connected, contributed, and helping peer-to-peers and going to teach children which they're passionate and commitment, I think this can be the solution for the future, or until the COVID-19 has been gone, but we don't know. One idea I would say is maybe we have to talk with the parents, with the teachers, with the director to be more resilient, because we don't know when COVID-19 is gonna go. So resilient should be one of the things that should be discussed and motivated. Okay. Also, one thing that I would add at the end is counseling, because during this we have quite a lot of reports on domestic violence internationally and locally, and so psycho counseling would be one of the skill or the important topics to be integrated for the young or for the youth, so that they can learn and then try to help to the other. So I would believe that the better learned youth can help the other friends or the other youth that has some difficulties. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Krambonli. We would like go back into Mrs. Najila from Aisyah Dia, Mbak Ella, Indonesian. I feel that online learning is less effective. Do you have any input on how to keep this online learning optimal with the same understanding as a classroom learning?
Thank you, Aisha. I think when people compare online versus offline learning, sometimes we make a generalization and simplifications of the features of online and offline learning. There are great and many examples of best practices in online learning, which basically have to be scrutinized by the same pedagogical principle as we try to evaluate the offline learning as well. I think one of the most common misconception for online learning is that it means a one-way learning. While there are plenty of opportunities and tools to actually do synchronized learning, to make it interactive, to listen and give feedback to each other between teachers and students, that can actually be the highlight and one of the main opportunities to increase the quality by using online learning. One of the other misconceptions is that online learning equals more screen time. This is not true at all. You can do great online learning utilizing an opportunity to meet digitally, but also giving project-based learning where students can contextualize learning according to their home situation, specific issues in their neighborhood, and many, many other examples. So I want us to be really careful in making a generalizations on these issues, saying that online is better than offline or online is worse than offline, because there are so many features, different kinds of activities that can be utilized as teachers in this blended model, and utilizing the best available features of the online and the offline together, as long as the teachers actually have the competencies to do a really good learning designing. Because if you're talking about learning, then it will be at the end, it will be evaluated properly by the achievement of certain learning outcomes. And I think what's lacking is the understanding of the learning design, the understanding of the pedagogical pattern that need to be implemented in the context of blended or online and offline combination within learning. And that's one of the main role of an education institution, educational organization, to keep supporting our teachers and our students to get the most benefit within this distance learning method, while also hoping that we'll get face-to-face interaction soon to enrich the learning experience and make a totally digitally integrated learning experience.
Thank you, Mrs. Nazila. We still receive many questions from you. However, unfortunately, we are running out of time. So if you don't mind, maybe you can give a follow-up question into IYCSQ or maybe social media, Rumah Kepemimpinan. You can give the follow-up question. But we would like to give 1 minute for closing statement from each speaker. Maybe Mbak Najila can start for our closing statement today.
Yes, new normal brings lots of opportunity to adapt and to learn, but also it brings the needs for each and every single one of us to also unlearn some old habits, to try to leave certain things that, you know, we're doing, but not actually being helpful to the educations, to the quality of learning. Education is an ecosystem where sometimes tradition and innovations are conflicted, as if it cannot happen in parallel. And I really want to use the situation of this new normal, the lessons that we've been getting during this pandemic, to preserve and embrace good pedagogical practice in educations, but also to unleash opportunity to innovate. And the innovation should not only come from the adults, but also come from the youth, the new generations of teachers, and any other kind of experimentation and best practice that we've been seeing. I believe that youth is the most important part of education. You are actually the subject of this whole process of learning. So please raise your voice, please give more feedback, and please ensure that the education ecosystem can actually disrupt themselves, do more innovation, and transform into this new normal by giving more and more positive impact to each and every single student. Thank you for listening, and hope to collaborate with more and more of you in this education endeavor.
Thank you for your strong insight, Najila. Next for our speaker, Mr. Edwansa, for give a closing statement for 1 minute. Is okay for you? Yeah, we can start now.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Sisi. So, well, as I mentioned, COVID is not an individual case. COVID is not an individual challenge. COVID is a nation challenge that we need to face together. One of the good things that we have is the gotong royong value, or the solidarity, social solidarity. I think this is the most important value that we need to have to undergo and to pass this COVID pandemic until maybe soon as possible, of course. If only the youth that doing the good things regarding COVID, the COVID will not go out. So it should be a nationwide activity, nationwide movement to fight against the COVID. That's the first thing. The last thing is, I would like to emphasize that the role of the youth is much more important in the future after the pandemic. The youth has a big size of demographic size in Indonesia, in ASEAN also. I think it's around 30 to up to 50% of from the total population. So as Bu Najila also mentioned, we are not only the object of the development, we are also the subject of the development. So how we're going to go out from the pandemic, and how we're going to revive our nation, our economy after the pandemic, it depends on the youth. So be innovative, be transparent, and be collaborative.
Okay.
So hopefully we can be.
Okay, thank you. For our last speaker, for your closing statement, Mr. Kyun Bunli.
Yes, okay. First, by then I would like to present very much the terms of participant. We can see from this about 200 youth, which is, I mean, this is about the passionating of a person, or I mean, that committed in something, and which I believe that helping the other to get a good education is our commission, and and our team. That's why I would believe a passionate commitment would help us as a young people, helping the new generation, especially children in poor community, to get educated and then become potential in the future. One more thing I would end up is about, you know, a mentoring, because if youth that has been have a good skill and you go to somewhere, there's a local young team, and by effective communication or understanding the content or talking, you might get something a bit, and then probably from your fascinating and or maybe internship or volunteerism can help change the life of a youth to become a better future through education.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kernbonle. Since we are embracing the new normal now, so we would like to share appreciation virtual and also take a picture virtual. If you don't mind, if you would like to join us, maybe you can take the stop video out and take a picture for a while, or we can share. Okay, can we, the admin of Rumah Kepemimpinan, can we take a picture now?
That's new to me. I learned from Zoom you can take a picture.
Okay. Can we check?
Or do you want to give digital appreciation for the speaker?
Okay. Oh, but before we take a picture, we would like to share digital appreciation for each speaker today. Okay, for Mr. Sandiaga Uno. Our wonderful speakers that already joining us today in IYCS 2020, that discussing about what should we prepare as ASEAN youth and civil society to face a new normal. Thank you again for wonderful and strong insight and also message that you already delivered with our participant team. Okay, can we hear a clap, maybe virtual clap? Can we take a picture now, virtual picture for screenshot or, okay? May I count 1, 2, 3? Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you again for our speakers and also for all the participants. Thank you for all wonderful speakers and also thoughtful insight today. May the strength will follow us during the uncertainty time. So best luck for each one of us, and hope to see you soon, not only in the virtual show, probably in the next year. Really a strong hope for that. And then thank you again for the all participant IYCS 2020. Don't forget to follow all social media that related with IYCS 2020. You can find and also maybe can give a follow-up question later on. Then can, especially for question for the Sandiaga Uno, because he wouldn't be able to attend. He could attend the event. So I'm Cecilia Spasia, as speaking behalf of the crew IYCS 2020, signing out. Pleased to see you everyone, and goodbye, and see you next time.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone.